In the far-off lands of the East, it was said there lived a wise man, hidden from the sight of most people. He was famous throughout the world, not for his wealth or his power, but for his incomparable wisdom on one single subject, the use of words. People would travel thousands of miles on a difficult journey just to learn from him the secret of when to speak and when to remain silent. His most famous teaching was known as the 4 Gates of Speech. One day, the master's peace was interrupted. A young student came running to him, breathless with excitement.
Master, Master, I have just heard something about your friend that I must tell you.
The wise man stopped him, not with a harsh word, but with a simple, calm gesture. He looked at his student with serene eyes and asked, "Stop, my student. The words you are about to speak, have you passed them through the 4 gates?" The student, taken aback, could only ask,
The 4 gates, Master? What are those?
The wise man began to explain. The first gate is truth. Are you absolutely certain that what you are about to say is true? Have you seen it with your own eyes? Or did you merely hear it from someone else?
Well, no, he admitted. I did not see it myself. I only heard it.
So, you are not certain that it is true, the master said. Very well. Let us now try the second gate. The second gate is necessity. Is it necessary for you to tell me this? Will some harm come if you do not tell me?
The student, lowering his head, replied, "No, I do not think it is truly necessary."
"Good," said the master. Now we approach the third gate. The third gate is kindness. Is what you are about to say kind? Will it leave a good impression of my friend, or will it stain his reputation? Is there kindness in these words?
The student, almost in a whisper, replied, "No, on the contrary."
And the final, 4th gate, the master continued softly, is the right time. Let us say the words are true, necessary, and kind. But is this the right moment to say them? Perhaps it is better to wait. The student remained silent. So, the master concluded gently, if the words you want to speak are not certainly true, not necessary, and not kind, then why speak them at all? Simply let them go. so they disturb neither your peace nor the peace of others. These 4 gates are not just the wisdom of an ancient master. They are a vital guide for our world today, especially in the age of the internet and social media. If every comment we write, every word we speak, and every rumor we share were to pass through these 4 gates, our world would become a much kinder and more peaceful place. In the ancient lands of the East, there lived a young man. Though handsome, honest, and hard-working, he was an orphan and lived in deep poverty. As time went on, he fell in love with a beautiful girl from his village, but he did not have the means to marry her. After much thought, he gathered his courage and went to the wealthiest landowner in the village. "Sir," he said, "I wish to marry, to protect myself from the wrongdoings of the world. Please lend me the money, and I will make you a promise. If I cannot repay you in time, I will pull your plow myself in place of your oxen." The landowner, a pragmatic man, was intrigued by this strange offer and agreed. The young man married the girl he loved, and for a time he felt like the richest man on earth. Their small home was filled with love, if not with wealth. He worked tirelessly, throwing himself into any job he could find, from sunrise to sunset, hoping to save enough to repay the landlord. But life for a new family was hard. Every coin he earned was spent on their simple needs. And as the deadline approached, he realized with a heavy heart he would not be able to keep his promise. After a year of hard work, the time came to repay the debt, but the young man had saved nothing. True to his word, he went before the landowner. "Sir," he said with humble determination, "I could not bring you the money, but I am ready to fulfill my promise." And so, the man who was once a hopeful groom now became an ox. He pulled the heavy plow under the scorching sun, his body aching, but his honor intact. One day, the wise traveler passed by and saw this unbelievable sight. Filled with rage at what he thought was a cruel injustice, he galloped towards the landowner. "Have you no shame, old man, to make a human do the work of an animal?" he demanded. The landowner simply shrugged and said, "Ask him yourself." The traveler turned to the young man. "What is this state you are in, my son? And the young man, wiping the sweat from his brow, looked at him with calm, clear eyes and said, "This is temporary. This too shall pass." The traveler was stunned into silence. He looked at the young man not as a victim, but as a sage. Moved by his incredible honor and unshakable faith, the traveler reached into his saddlebag, pulled out a heavy purse filled with gold coins, and gave it to the young man. "A man of your character does not belong in a harness," the traveler said. "Pay your debt, build a life for yourself." And with that, the traveler continued on his journey, the young man's profound words echoing in his mind. The wise traveler, moved by the young man's honor, gave him a purse heavy with gold. With this gift, the young man's life was transformed. He first paid off his debt, freeing himself from his vow. Then, with the remaining money and his own relentless hard work, he built a beautiful home, bought fertile land, and raised livestock and a lush garden. In a short time, he became one of the most prosperous men in the village. His wisdom and fairness earned him the respect of all, and soon the villagers chose him as their leader. One day, the traveler returned. He saw the man, now a respected leader, sitting peacefully on his veranda. "I see life has been very good to you," the traveler said with a smile. "Yesterday you were an ox. Today you are a great man. Your life is now settled and complete." "This is true," he replied, looking at his vast lands with the same calm eyes. "But I am not overjoyed, for I know this too is temporary. This too shall pass." The traveler, once again amazed by this unshakable wisdom, simply wished him well and continued. And for a time, life was good. But the winds of fate are ever changing, and soon they began to blow with a terrible fury. A storm of unimaginable power descended upon the village. A great flood swept away the man's home, his lands, his livestock. Everything he had built with his own hands was washed away in a single night. The man who was yesterday the richest was today the poorest once again. But even in the face of this utter ruin, he did not despair. He gathered what was most precious to him, his family, and prepared to walk the path of fate once more. And so, the man took his family and wandered from village to village. Eventually, they found a home in a small, abandoned hut, and the man became a shepherd for the village. Life was poor, but it was peaceful. He tended to the sheep, his wife took up sewing, and together they lovingly raised their 2 sons. But one day, the cruel and wealthy vizier of that land was riding through the village when his expensive robe was torn. Searching for a tailor, he was directed to the humble hut of the shepherd's wife. When the vizier saw her beauty, a wicked desire took root in his heart. After she had mended his robe, he did not leave. Instead, he began to spin a cruel lie. The vizier, his heart set on his wicked plan, returned to the hut. He spoke with a voice full of fake urgency.
Your husband sent me. The flock is under attack by wolves. He needs your help, but the children must stay here where it's safe. We must hurry.
The wife, fearing for her husband, believed the cruel lie. She was whisked away by the vizier, leaving her sons behind. That evening, the shepherd returned home, tired but content, only to find his world shattered. His wife was gone. His older son, through tears, told him of the wealthy man who had taken her away. The shepherd's heart broke as he realized the truth of the cruel deception.
The man, now a wanderer once more, took his 2 sons and began a desperate search for his wife. One day, their path was blocked by a raging river, the bridge destroyed. Determined to continue, he decided to carry his children across one by one. He left his older son on the bank and, with his younger son on his shoulders, began to cross the treacherous, churning water.
But as he reached the middle of the river, he looked back and saw a sight of pure terror. A wolf had emerged from the forest and was chasing his older son into the woods. In his panic and horror, the father stumbled. His younger son slipped from his shoulders and was instantly swallowed by the raging current. In a single horrifying moment, he had lost them both.
And so the man, having lost his wife and now both of his sons, was left utterly alone. With nothing left to lose, he became a wanderer, his heart a hollow echo of the joy it once knew. He walked the earth with no destination, his only purpose to search, even without hope. One day, on a desolate road, the wise traveler saw him once again. He was shocked, struggling to recognize the strong, prosperous leader in the broken, ragged man who stood before him. He dismounted his horse.
My friend, what is this terrible state you are in? What has happened to you?
The man slowly lifted his head. His face was a mask of immense, unending sorrow. But his eyes were surprisingly clear. He looked at the traveler, and with a calm that defied all logic, he spoke. The shepherd's life, That joy has passed. The grief that came, I know this too shall pass. I will find them. Wondrous, questioning, disbelief. The traveler stared at him, utterly bewildered. How could a man who had lost everything still speak with such faith? He saw not a sage, but a man driven mad by grief. Shaking his head in disbelief, the traveler wished him peace and continued on his way, leaving the man alone once more on his endless journey. And so the man, having lost everything he ever loved, was left utterly alone. He became a wanderer, his heart a hollow echo of the joy it once knew. Years passed in this way as he walked the earth with no destination. One day, weary and heartbroken, he arrived at the gates of a grand capital city. He entered the crowded main square and found a quiet corner to sit, unnoticed, expecting nothing. Suddenly, a strange silence fell over the bustling square. The crowd looked up in awe. The royal bird, released to choose the new king after the old one had passed, was circling the sky above. Everyone watched, holding their breath as the majestic bird descended and landed gently on the shoulder of the bewildered, ragged wanderer. The people were in disbelief. "This cannot be," they cried. "A beggar cannot be our king." 3 times they released the bird, and 3 times it returned to the same man. Finally, accepting it as the will of heaven, they took the wanderer to the palace. This was a man who had seen the highest peaks and the lowest valleys of life. He had known loss, agony, pain, and suffering. He had also known wealth, poverty, loneliness, and the joy of a family. With this ocean of experience, with these scars on his soul, he ruled the kingdom beautifully. He solved problems with a unique compassion. He was relentless, never resting, pushing his ministers to work tirelessly for the people. He held meetings not just in the palace, but in the streets, among the common folk, truly understanding their needs. He was not just a king, he was a father to his kingdom. One day, he noticed that one of his most important viziers was absent from the royal council. The next day, the king summoned him. "Why were you not at the council yesterday?"
Your Majesty, my wife is gravely ill.
Your wife's health is important, but you are a servant of the state. You cannot abandon your duties at will. There are thousands of families who depend on you. You have two choices. Either resign your post or place 2 royal guards at your door. Let the state provide for your needs. A physician if she needs one, food from the market, water from the well, so you can return to your duty to the people. And so, the vizier, following the king's command, placed 2 new guards at the door to his wife's chambers and returned to his duties. And it is there, at that lonely doorway, that destiny began to reveal its incredible design. The 2 young guards, strangers to each other, began to share stories to pass the long hours. "I was very young," said the first guard. "A wolf attacked me. The villagers saved me, but I was separated from my father. My mother, she had been stolen away even before that. My story is the same," the second guard replied, his voice trembling. "My mother was stolen. My father and I were searching for her when we came to a river. He tried to save my brother from a wolf, and in the chaos, I fell into the water and was swept away." The 2 guards stared at each other, realizing the unbelievable truth. They were the lost brothers. From inside, the vizier's wife, who had overheard everything, burst through the door. "My sons!" she cried, throwing herself to the ground before them. The mother had found her children, and the brothers had found each other. But their tearful reunion was brutally interrupted. The vizier returned, unaware of the true story and seeing what he believed to be a forbidden meeting, his face twisted with rage. Without a single question, he condemned the 2 young guards to death for treason. The brothers, who had just found each other, were immediately dragged to the execution grounds. Hope, it seemed, was lost once again. Just at that moment, as the 2 young men were about to be taken away, the wise traveler arrived at the palace square once more. He saw his old friend, the man he once knew as an ox, now sitting on a throne as a king. "Look at you now! Yesterday you were an ox, and today you are a king. Has everything finally settled for you? Have you found peace?" "It is true, I am a king," the protagonist replied. "But this is not forever. This too shall pass. Nothing is permanent." "Is there nothing in this world that remains? Does everything simply pass away? Is there nothing that lasts?" "Return in 6 months," the king said, "and I will give you the answer." The wise traveler, pondering the king's mysterious words, continued on his way. The king, meanwhile, remained with his duties. The two young guards, the lost brothers, were brought to the gallows. As the executioner prepared the ropes, they were asked if they had a final request. "We wish to see the king," the older brother said. "We are innocent, and we believe only he will understand our story and grant us justice." The request was so unusual that it was relayed to the king. The king, intrigued, agreed to see them. The king, intrigued by the request, arrived at the execution grounds. He listened intently as the two young guards recounted their tragic story. A story of a stolen mother, a wolf, and a river. As the king listened, he realized the unbelievable, impossible truth. This was not just a story. This was his story. Before him stood his own lost sons. In that single, earth-shattering moment, a lifetime of pain was washed away. The king, his face a mask of utter disbelief and overwhelming emotion, stepped forward. The guards looked at him, confused by the tears in his eyes. The wife, seeing the king's reaction, finally understood. A father had found his sons. A husband had found his wife. And the lost children had found their father, the king. The family, once broken by the cruelest turns of fate, was finally, miraculously whole again. "6 months passed. The wise traveler, true to his word, returned to the capital city to finally receive his answer to the great question: what is it that lasts? But he was met with sorrowful news. The wise king, after a life of immense trials and profound wisdom, had passed away peacefully. With a heavy heart, the traveler went to visit his friend's grave. It was a simple, humble tombstone, not one fit for a king. And there, carved into the stone, he found the final, complete answer he was seeking. The inscription read, "This too shall pass. What truly remains will be known on the day of judgment, where we will be and in what state we will remain. Only then will all the things that change, that are given and taken away, finally cease. Until then, nothing stops." And so, the ultimate lesson of this ancient saga is this: whatever state we find ourselves in today, we must never forget. Whether we are in the deepest mud or flying high in the heavens, we must never forget. It passes. It passes. If we are hungry, one day we will be full.
If our clothes are torn, one day they will be whole. Whatever we lack in this world, there may come a day when we have it. And whatever we have today, there may come a day when it is all gone. Let us treat life, other people, and ourselves according to this profound truth. Let us find our peace, not in our temporary state, but in our faith in the one who is eternal. Only then will we find what truly lasts. Thank you for watching.
In the vastness of the ancient deserts, where the world feels silent and wise, true stories are carried by the wind. This is a story from the 13th century mystic poet, Rumi. A story about a prophet, a simple shepherd, and a lesson that would change the way we understand faith itself. One day, the prophet Moses was journeying through this desert when he heard a voice. It was the shepherd speaking to God, not with grand words, but with the pure, simple language of his heart. He prayed, "Oh, my beloved God, where are you? So I can be your servant, so I can mend your sandals and comb your hair. I would wash your clothes and bring you milk and kiss your dear hands. All my goats are a sacrifice to you, you who I remember in every word I speak." Hearing these words, the prophet Moses approached the shepherd, his heart filled with righteous anger. "Who are you speaking to?" he demanded. The shepherd replied, "To the one who created us, who created the earth and the sky." Moses rebuked him harshly. "Stop this nonsense. You have become an unbeliever. Does God wear shoes? Does he need you to wash his clothes? These words are blasphemy. You are poisoning the world with your foolishness." The shepherd's heart shattered. He thought his simple love had been a great sin. Filled with shame and despair, he tore his clothes, cried out in sorrow, and ran into the wilderness, lost and silent. After the shepherd had vanished, a revelation came to Moses from God. It was not a praise, but a powerful lesson. "Moses, have you come to this world to unite or to divide? You have separated my servant from me. I do not look at the outward words or grand titles. I look at the heart within. I look for the burning sincerity. That shepherd's words may seem wrong to you, but his heart was pure. His mistaken love is more precious to me than the cold praise of the proud."
Moses realized his mistake. He ran into the desert searching for the heartbroken shepherd. When he finally found him, he delivered the divine message. "Good news," he said. "God has accepted your prayer. You are free. Speak whatever your heart desires, for a sincere heart is all that truly matters.
Rumi's story teaches us a timeless lesson, that faith is not measured by the perfection of our words, but by the sincerity of our hearts. It reminds us not to judge others, for everyone has their own unique path to the divine. What truly matters is the love within. In the late 12th century, the sands of the Holy Land were scorched by the fires of the Third Crusade. It was a clash of worlds, a battle of faith and empires. At the heart of this conflict stood two legendary leaders. On one side, King Richard the Lionheart of England, a warrior king, fierce and relentless. On the other, Sultan Saladin, the wise, just, and brilliant strategist who united the Muslim world. They were more than just enemies. They were rivals who held a grudging respect for each other's strength. Their war was a test of power, of will, and ultimately, of character. But in the heart of the Crusader camp, a disaster was unfolding. The Lionheart, King Richard himself, was struck down by an unknown fever. His body, as strong as iron in battle, now burned with an unrelenting heat. The greatest physicians from Europe stood helpless, their scrolls and potions useless against the desert illness. Despair began to spread through the army like a plague. Their invincible lion was on the brink of death. The news of Richard's condition quickly reached Saladin's camp. His commanders saw a golden opportunity. "This is a sign from God," they urged. "Their lion is wounded. Let us attack now and end this war." It was the logic of war. But Saladin was considering a different kind of logic, the logic of honor. He knew that true victory was not in defeating a man at his weakest, but in rising above the hatred of war itself. He made a decision that would echo through history. Shortly after, a small procession under a white flag of truce approached the Crusader camp. The knights, expecting a trick, were stunned by what they saw. Not weapons, but gifts. Fresh fruits to quench the thirst. His own personal, highly skilled physician. And the most precious gift of all in the burning desert, snow, brought from the distant mountains to cool the king's unrelenting fever. Through this act of unexpected kindness, Richard the Lionheart recovered. The war did not end that day, but something profound had shifted between the two leaders. A bond of mutual respect, forged not by the sword, but by a single act of honor. This extraordinary event was recorded not only by Muslim chroniclers, but by the Christian historians of the Crusades as well, a testament to its impact. The story of the Sultan and the Lionheart teaches us a timeless lesson that our character is defined not by how we treat our friends, but by how we treat our enemies. It reminds us that even in the darkest of conflicts, a single act of humanity can shine a light that echoes through history. In the heart of the endless sea of sand, where the dunes whisper secrets to the stars, the night was an ocean of deep, silent indigo. Upon this ocean, a lone traveler journeyed, his path illuminated by a single flickering lamp. His name was Kale, a young man on a pilgrimage, not of distance, but of the soul. The cool night air was a relief from the day's scorching sun, but it carried with it a profound, almost sacred loneliness. He stopped, his senses suddenly on high alert. It began not as a sound, but as a feeling. A sudden drop in temperature, a prickling on his skin as if 1,000 unseen eyes were upon him. Then he heard it. Faint whispers carried on the wind like fragments of forgotten sorrows. They were shapeless, indecipherable, yet they seemed to know his name. The flame of his lamp, once a steady beacon, now danced wildly, casting long, nervous shadows that twisted and writhed upon the sand. He forced himself to move, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He told himself it was just the wind, a trick of the exhausted mind. But the feeling of being watched intensified with every step. And then, in the distance, where the moonlight failed to reach, he saw it. A figure. It was a tear in the fabric of the night, a silhouette of pure darkness, tall and unnaturally still. It had no face, no features, yet he felt its gaze pierce through him. He blinked, hoping to clear the illusion, and in that instant, it was gone.
vanished as if it had never been there. But the image was burned into his mind, a silent observer in the dark. The fear was no longer a whisper. It was a cold, heavy presence coiling in his stomach. He knew he could not stay in the open. He needed sanctuary, a place of refuge. Desperation guiding his feet, he pressed onward, scanning the horizon for any sign of shelter. Hope arrived in the form of a silhouette against the lesser dark of the horizon. Ruins of a forgotten village, skeletal remains of mud brick homes sleeping under a blanket of stars. And at its heart, a structure that still stood with a quiet dignity, an old abandoned mosque, its minaret a broken finger pointing towards the heavens. To Kale, it was a beacon. Surely, within such a sacred place, no evil could touch him. Inside, the air was thick with the dust of ages and a profound, sacred silence. He sat against a pillar, his breathing heavy,
the lamp casting a warm golden circle around him.
For a moment, he felt safe. But the silence did not last. It was broken by a sound that did not belong, the soft, deliberate scrape of a footstep on the stone floor. His head snapped up. There was no one there. And then he saw it on the wall, a long, distorted shadow moving, a shadow that belonged to no physical body. Panic seized him. He shut his eyes tight, his lips forming the words of a desperate prayer. In that instant, the heavy wooden door of the mosque slammed shut with a deafening boom that shook the very foundations. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The flame of his lamp flared violently, threatening to die. An invisible pressure filled the room, a physical weight of despair pressing down on him, trying to suffocate his hope. Exhausted and terrified, he slipped into a feverish, restless sleep. He found himself in a world of absolute darkness, standing in a corridor of countless doors. One by one, they creaked open, revealing only deeper voids of shadow. And behind him, he could feel it, the tall, dark entity from the desert, its presence a chilling certainty. When he dared to look back, he saw two burning embers floating in the blackness, eyes of malevolent crimson fire. It was the predator of his own fear. He ran, his heart pounding in the silent void, but it glided behind him, relentless. The whispers were now a cacophony in his mind. His lamp shattered in his hand, and he was left in the crushing darkness with only the red eyes and the sound of his own terror. Just as all hope seemed lost, a single faint point of golden light appeared in the distance. It was small, but it was warm and unwavering. Trembling, he moved towards it. As he drew closer, the light grew brighter, warmer, filling the void. The creature of shadow recoiled, letting out a silent scream of evaporating darkness, and dissolved into smoke. He awoke with a gasp, drenched in sweat, lying on the floor of the mosque.
The first rays of dawn were streaming through the arched windows, painting the ancient walls in hues of gold and rose. The night was over. He stepped outside, weak but alive, and watched the sun rise over the endless desert. The world felt new, cleansed. He looked back at the old mosque, a silent guardian that had sheltered him from the horrors of the unseen. And so, the traveler continued his journey, no longer just a young man, but a soul who had faced the deepest darkness and found a light within, for he had learned a profound truth. That sometimes fear is not a punishment, but a test. And true strength is found not in escaping the darkness, but in carrying your own light through it. For even in the most profound night, a single spark of faith can ignite a dawn that banishes all shadows. In a bustling city square, there was a restaurant owned by a very rich and very greedy man. The aroma of his delicious soup filled the air, but its price was so high, only the wealthy could afford a taste. One day, a humble poor man sat across the street. In his hands, he held nothing but a dry piece of bread. He closed his eyes, and with a happy sigh, he began to enjoy a meal of his own, a feast of delicious smells. He would dip his plain bread into the rich aroma and eat with pure delight.
But this simple moment of joy was shattered. The greedy owner stormed out from his restaurant, his face red with fury. He grabbed the poor man by the collar.
You thief! Did you think I wouldn't notice? You are enjoying the smell of my soup. That smell has a price. Pay me what you owe. The poor man, terrified and confused, could only stammer, "But sir, I tasted nothing." But the rich man would not listen, and soon a crowd began to gather. Just as the argument was about to boil over, a familiar figure appeared at the edge of the crowd. It was Nasreddin Hodja, the wise fool with his loyal donkey. He calmly made his way to the center of the spectacle.
"Peace, peace," he said with a gentle smile. "I will be the judge of this strange case."
The rich man, confident he would win, quickly agreed. The poor man, seeing a glimmer of hope, agreed as well. The crowd fell silent, waiting to see what cleverness Nasreddin would reveal this time. Nasreddin turned to the poor man. "Do you have any money?" he asked gently. The poor man, ashamed, pulled out his last 2 small coins.
Nasreddin took them. The rich man's eyes lit up. But Nasreddin did not give him the coins. Instead, he cupped them in his hands and shook them vigorously next to the rich man's ear, making them jingle loudly. "Did you hear that?" Nasreddin asked. "Yes, of course I heard it," said the greedy man. Nasreddin smiled his famous clever smile. "Then the debt is paid," he declared. "The sound of the money is the fair price for the smell of the soup." He returned the coins to the poor man as the crowd roared with laughter and applause, praising his perfect justice. And so, with a simple jingle of coins, true justice was served. Nasreddin Hodja, having solved the problem, simply disappeared back into the crowd, leaving behind a lesson for the greedy and a small fortune for the poor. The story reminds us that not everything of value can be held in our hands. Sometimes the most clever justice is also the most simple, and the fairest price is one that cannot be spent at all.
Long ago, in the days of the great scholars of Islam, there lived Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. His knowledge, his devotion, and his piety made him one of the most respected figures of his time. What I will share with you now is one of the most remarkable stories from his life. A story about the power of remembrance, patience, and the acceptance of prayer. One day, Imam Ahmad was traveling far from home. As night fell, he searched for a place to rest. He entered a mosque, hoping to spend the night in worship, but the caretaker of the mosque did not recognize him. The man was stern and insisted that no one was allowed to stay inside overnight. Imam Ahmad tried to explain, but the caretaker grew harsh. Not only did he refuse to allow him inside, but he forced him out and even dragged him away from the entrance, pushing him into the street. At that moment, a baker who lived nearby saw the scene. His heart was touched by compassion. He approached the weary traveler and said, "My house is close by. Please come with me and stay as my guest. It would be an honor to host you." Imam Ahmad accepted. The baker welcomed him into his home, offered him a place to rest, and returned to his work at the oven, preparing bread for the night. As Imam Ahmad sat quietly, he noticed something unusual. The baker's tongue was never still. While kneading the dough, while placing the loaves into the oven, while tending the fire. With every action, he was engaged in the remembrance of Allah. Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. Finally, Imam Ahmad asked him, "My brother, why do you make so much remembrance of Allah while you work?" The baker smiled and replied, "It has been my practice since my youth. Whatever I do, I keep my tongue occupied with the remembrance of Allah. And by His mercy, I have found that whatever I ask of Him, He grants me. Every supplication I have made has been answered, except for one." Imam Ahmad asked, "And what is that supplication which has not yet been granted?" The baker lowered his voice and said, "All my life I have prayed for the chance to meet the great scholar Ahmad ibn Hanbal. But until today, that prayer has not been answered." Hearing this, Imam Ahmad's eyes filled with tears. His voice trembled as he said, "Subhanallah, your prayer has indeed been answered today. Do you know how Allah brought me here? The caretaker of the mosque dragged me by my feet
and threw me into the street. And from there, I was led directly to your door. I am Ahmad ibn Hanbal." The baker was astonished. He could hardly believe that the guest sitting in his home was the very man he had prayed to meet for so many years. That night became a lesson not only for the baker, but also for Imam Ahmad himself. A reminder that Allah answers the prayers of His servants in ways they could never expect. Even what seems harsh or difficult can be the very means by which a prayer is fulfilled.